Hello friends, welcome to this session of Quality of India. Myself Dr. Audit, and in this session we are going to give you 10 important tips for handling customer audits. And the scenario we are going to take is from a manufacturing company. So in a typical manufacturing companies, how you are going to plan, how you are going to manage the customer audits. So we are going to give you 10 important tips. The first tip, very important one, understanding audit scope and requirement. So the customer is going to come to you for conducting audits. So try to understand what exactly is the audit scope, why the customer is coming, what exactly is the purpose, what all area they are going to cover, whether it is a system audit, whether they are going to cover the product audit also, or a process audit, what exactly is the purpose. Okay, the purpose, the scope and the requirement needs to be understood. Very important. If the customer is having a specific check sheet, based on the check sheet they are going to evaluate you, then it's better talk to your customer and try to understand the check sheet beforehand. If the customer has been auditing you, that means they have already conducted a previous assessment or audit and you already have a report which talks about various kinds of requirements, checkpoints, then it's better to plan beforehand, understand all the points and prepare accordingly. So understanding the important focus areas like quality, processes and compliances are going to be crucial for you to succeed in the customer audit. So more and more you have understanding about the audit scope and the requirement, the content of the checklist. If at all they are going to use a checklist, it is going to be beneficial for you. So this is the first tip for you. Second one, preparation and documentation. So now you have understood the customer's requirement. Now you are going to prepare for the audit. So how you are going to prepare? Say for an example, the customer is having a check sheet and there are different clauses, there are different requirements or different sections are there. So you may do one thing, that is about identifying sectional heads or maybe clause head within your company. Say for an example, there is a clause which talks about quality requirement. So you can nominate somebody from quality to take care of that quality clause. And there is a clause pertaining to training, education or maybe from HR activities. You may nominate somebody from HR to take care of those things. Okay. So in this way, try to form a cross-function team. That means member pulling from different departments who are going to be heading or understanding different clause requirement of the checklist. And they are going to basically do a self-assessment beforehand. It could be a person or it could be a small team leading that particular clause. They are going to do self-assessment and they are going to identify the gap areas. So that is going to be very crucial for you to prepare because they are managing that particular area. So they better understand the clause requirement, the content, they can review the document, the records and they can identify the gap areas. Now here you can ask the team members who has been given specific clauses or specific area or section to review. They can go through the required manuals, if there are department-wise manuals or there are quality manuals, if there are process flow charts, if there are SOPs or work instructions or departmental procedures. So the team or the individual may go through each and every element as per the checklist. They can go through the contents of the department like reviewing the work instructions and seeing the adequacy, whether the content mentioned in the procedures, work instructions, SOPs are adequate or not. First, check the adequacy. Second, check the implementation and effectiveness. So typically, customer would be focusing on two elements. First one would be adequacy. Okay. Second would be implementation and effectiveness. So tell your individual clause heads, okay, or the leader of individual sections or head to check for adequacy. So in the adequacy part, you are going to ask the clause heads to check for the requirement, whether the requirements from the customer side has been properly, adequately addressed in the work instructions, procedure or not. That means procedure or the documentation part is good or not. Okay, it is properly defined, okay, end-to-end connected. So everything is there. So that is adequacy. Then second part would be If it is adequate, whether the procedure has been implemented and it is effective or not. Okay. So, checking adequacy part, implementation, effectiveness, all in all. This is very important. For an example, if you are asking an HR person to check for training documentation, so they are going to see if there is a specific procedure for a classroom training program, or identifying training need identification, preparing training calendar, how the training would be managed, how the training implementation effectiveness would be checked, whether the procedure talks about all of these things or not. That would be basically adequacy. Okay, that means procedure is adequately defined. Once it is defined properly, you have checked and you have found it is adequate. Now you are going to see if the training procedure has been implemented. That means whatever training calendar has been prepared, that is being adhered to or not. So month on month or week on week, whatever training plan has been made, that is being executed as per the plan or not, then it is effective or not, whether there is a system of checking the effectiveness of the training program or not, all the records have been properly maintained or not. Okay, so those things can be checked. And I have given you one example of training. Okay, the similar way it must be checked for all the departments or all the clauses mentioned by the customer in their checklist. Okay, in that way it needs to be checked. So it is important for us to ensure that all the records are up to date and it is easily accessible. This is very critical because I have seen in many instances whenever the auditor comes and the auditee or the team would be struggling to access the records or the documents. The auditor is asking for some document and the auditee would go and they would vanish for hours together. Okay, they are searching for the documents or the records and they are not getting it on time. So this is very critical. So it is important for you to keep all the records, all the documents in a proper place. Maybe proper numbering can be done, and it should be kept in such a way so that it is easily traceable, and when the auditor is asking, you can immediately bring the documents, ideally within 3 minutes. And the next important tip is to conduct internal audits. So before the customer is coming at your end, you along with your team members conduct a self audit so that you better understand what is the current scenario and what are the gap areas. So whatever gap areas you are going to identify, you can start working on them so that you are better prepared for the final assessment or the audit. So if you have any checklist or if you want to use the customer given checklist, that is better. So with reference to the checklist, try to ensure that all the areas are properly covered, and whatever potential gaps or potential issues you are going to identify, try to act on them so that you bridge all the gaps before the customer's visit. Okay, so address any non-conformity before the actual audit. So you are better prepared for the audit. And the next important tip is train your team. So the team members who are going to face the audit, they must be better trained. They must be understanding the customer's requirement, customer scope. So it is better for preparing themselves. So you can organize some maybe awareness session about the checklist, the customer checklist, so that people can understand. So these are the checklist, these are the content of the checklist, and these are the requirement, and customers are going to visit to these areas and they are going to ask these questions. Okay, if there is a schedule given by the customer, then you can share the schedule to the team members so they are better prepared. They are aware that there are going to be 3 days of audits, and these are the clauses or these are the requirements are going to be covered, and who is going to audit in which area, on what time, so that people are well aware and they are well prepared for the audit. And the next important input is designate a point of contact. So a single point of contact who are going to connect with the audit team, that is very important. So you need to identify a person who is going to talk to the customer side, and they are going to take all the downloads, all the inputs from the customer, and they are going to share it with the team members. Okay, so single point of contact is very much important for you to identify. An important point over here, the person, the single point of contact you are going to identify should be knowledgeable and able to answer questions and provide information promptly. So he is going to be sort of coordinator from your company to the customer side. So he must be having fair amount of understanding about the whole process of the company, department, and who's who. Okay, so that whatever questions are raised by the customers, he can handle himself, or he can at least coordinate with the concerned department and he can line up. Okay, so that means customer are not feeling very awkward that the person, the point of contact is, he doesn't understand the business, he doesn't understand the company, then it is going to be a problem. The next important tip is maintain a clean and organized facility. So we are talking about 5S. So before the customer visit, in fact, it should be a regular phenomenon, but still, you know that customer is going to come, so you better prepare the visit. So your plant should be neat, it should be tidy, properly organized, okay, and all the documents are updated. If some documents are displayed in the shop floor, try to make sure that all the documents are latest, up to date, all the trends are up to date, and if there are some gap area identified in any matrices, then proper action plans are given. Action plans have responsibility and target dates, so that when the customer visit to shop floor and he is going to any dashboard, he can understand himself without asking anybody what exactly is happening within the company, if there are gaps, what is the action plan, how it is moving, what is the target, okay, what is the vision, everything should be transparent. So it is sort of visual factory. So without asking anybody, everything should be visible within the company. So try to make it a visual factory. So clearly label equipments, work areas and materials, that is very much critical. Proper identification of materials, and if there are some non-conforming parts kept somewhere properly identified, you must be having proper records of all the non-conforming materials, rejection, analysis of rejections, all those things should be properly maintained. Because shop floor visit is happening, the customer might be interested in seeing how you are managing the suspected material, how you are managing the non-conforming product, how you are handling the rejections, okay, if there are some non-conforming products, how the rework or repairs are happening, whether there is a work instructions for rework and repair or not, how the tagging identification is done or not, okay, and then who is doing the rework, whether the person is competent, whether the customer are being informed, whether there is a record of information to customer. So all these things are critical part of the quality management system, and certain things must be available at the shop floor and certain things could be at the office area. So the customer is asking for any records or for any documentation, you should be in a position to promptly provide all those documented information to the customer. The next one is be open and honest. Very important. Open and honesty is critical, because when the customer tried to find that something is hidden, that means the supplier is trying to hide something, they are not transparent, and there is some cooking has been done in the documentation, then it is going to be a problematic audit for you. If there are some issues in the shop floor, be transparent and open to accept the problem, but also give confidence to the customer that, okay, this is a problem, we know it and we are working on it and we are going to take care of this thing, don't worry. So if you can give this kind of confidence to the customer, then customer is going to understand, because there is no company which doesn't have any problem. Problems are part and parcel of business, it is going to be there, but how you are handling the problem and how you are giving confidence to the customer during the audit, that is going to be crucial part of your auditing process. And the next important tip is preparing for the interview. So now the time has come and the customer is visiting to your end. So plan well in advance how many auditors are there. If there is going to be an opening meeting, who all are going to be in opening meeting, okay, and somebody should be keeping note of all the points. It could be the point of contact you have already identified, or the HODs, all of them, they can identify relevant input which are relevant to themselves, okay. So these things must be planned well in advance. When you are going to have opening meeting, who all are going to be there in the opening meeting, and when you are going to have the closing meeting, at what location, what time, and who all are going to be present in the closing meeting, and who is going to lead from your side. So these things are critical part of the planning of auditing. And then it is about the interview. So who is going to face for which all clauses? If there is a checklist by the auditor or the customer, then who is going to face? Who is going to face the interview, and who is going to support the person by providing some documentation, reports and those things. So generally it is advisable that 2 to 3% from a function, from a department, if they are there, it is better to manage the audit, because one person is facing the customer, maybe answering the questions, and there might be requirement of getting some maybe documents, some records, which may not be available at the point of the audit is happening. So somebody needs to run and get the document. Okay. So the person facing the interview, he himself should not be running. Somebody should be supporting him. So 2 to 3% each team or each function is advisable. And the next one, follow up after the audit. Now the audit has been completed. So you must have identified some observation during the audit. There are scenarios wherein customer during the closing meeting, they themselves will tell you all the observations, or they might be talking in a broader sense. They might give you broader view about the audit in the closing meeting, and they might send you a formal report later on, maybe after a couple of weeks or in a week's time. Okay. So it can vary from customer to customer, but it is advisable that during the audit, your team must be identifying the observations, must be recording all the happenings. Okay. And once the customer leaves, whatever customer is going to provide you input during the audit or at the closing meeting, that is welcome. But your team must be summarizing all the inputs. So once the customer leaves, you all should gather and summarize all the inputs and start discussing about taking any session. You must be summarizing and then start initiating the action points, because certain points may not be there in the final report which comes from the customer, because you yourself must have identified certain points during the audit which the customer is not going to tell you. So it is better that, since we understand our process much better than the customers, we ourselves should summarize all those inputs and should start acting on them. And when the formal report comes from the customer, review all the audit findings and the recommendation thoroughly. So the team should sit together and review all the audit findings, and then point by point start writing down the action plans and the responsibility and then target dates. Okay. And then somebody should be tracking whether the target dates and the action plans are getting completed on time or not. And it is also advisable to keep customer in loop at certain frequency. Say for an example, to complete all the action points, you have taken a target of 2 months. So on a weekly basis, if you can update the customer about the happening, about the progress, it is good. Customer would be feeling confident that the supplier is good and supplier is working promptly on all the action points, and it is going to give confidence to the customer. And within the team also, you should be keeping track of all the happenings. And the last tip, final tip, continuous improvement. So there is a never-ending journey of continuous or continual improvement that should keep on happening. So customer audit should be taken into consideration in a positive way, and you should be doing the horizontal deployment also. For an example, customer X has visited and there are 10, 20, 30 observations. So there might be a scenario wherein the similar action points can be horizontally deployed for other areas. So try to horizontally deploy the action points in other areas so that you can reap the maximum benefit out of these learnings. And whatever action points you have taken, try to update your procedures, your work practices, and keep evolving your standards, your work instruction, your practices, and train your people, provide all the relevant training program, whatever gaps you have identified during the audit, so that people are competent and they are competent enough to face the audit and to comply to all the requirements. So friends, in a broader sense, we have identified these 10 key steps or key tips for handling customer audits. I hope that this is going to be beneficial for you to face your audit also. So what's your view on our video? Write down in the comment section. And if you're new to our channel, don't forget to subscribe and click on the bell icon. And don't forget to explore our online training cum certification program. Download our app from Android and iOS store. And you may contact Quality Hub India for any kind of training, whether it is behavioral or technical training or ISO certification or business consulting. So bye for now. Take care. Jai Hind.